10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good golly, Miss Molly, and welcome to It's Only Talk and Roll. Today we pay tribute to the one, the only, the late, great Brian Wilson, one of the true genius songwriters, producers of pop and rock music. Many acts, as I've said in a number of streams here, many acts have fans who claim that yes, my guy is an icon and a genius. There's very few of those in reality. And Brian Wilson, though, was definitely one of them. And so we cannot allow his passing to go without having a tribute show and to discuss all those wonderful records, particularly the Beach Boys stuff that just enriched and enlightened the lives of millions of people around the world. So welcome to the show. I'm very pleased to welcome my buddy, my brother in rock, possibly my son in real life, who knows, Pope Metallicus. How are you, mate?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, like you said, we can't, let talent like this pass from this world without at least having a final say about him. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Beach Boys stuff, but even for a guy like me, I mean, my dad grew up with it. I grew up listening to it, and just musically, the guy was talented as hell. And from a production standpoint, these guys were doing stuff in '62 and '63 that weren't common until the end of the decade.
Yeah, and that was part of his enduring legacy, is the fact that right from the beginning, he wanted to, and indeed did, produce his own works. And along with a few other acts, obviously notably the Beatles took forward the art form of producing pop and rock records as an art form, not as, some faceless producer who didn't give a shit churning crap out. He really cared about what he was doing. He cared so much that in the end it kind of drove him a bit mad. But so it's guys like that took music forward. And yes, I know we can all look back at those early Beach Boys hits and go, well, they're just a load of fun pop. But when you peel back the layers of what he was doing on there, particularly with the harmony arrangements and some of the other arrangements, there's some really special stuff going on there. And given the man was not formally trained, he was an incredible arranger and composer. So the Beach Boys legacy, thanks to Brian and the other guys, of course, but thanks to Brian's songwriting production, is peerless. And as you say, I mean, I am a big fan. I mean, I've grown up, it's like another one of these guys. I grew up listening to those songs as a kid on the radio when we still had radios on everywhere. And so, along with the Beatles and other acts, the Beach Boys permeated my consciousness from an early age, those 60s hits. And then, funnily enough, I actually got, in my early record buying days in the early 70s, got into some of the early 70s albums, where Brian was a little less involved because of his troubles, but still some fantastic material. All of the early albums on Capitol were, I mean, they did 10 albums in 3 years or something.
Yeah, it was insane levels of output from them at that time.
And it's kind of like what there was, and it's funny that they were on the same label as the Beatles, of course, Capitol. But Capitol just wanted to churn those, chop everything up and churn it out. So 10 albums up until Pet Sounds. And after that, they made albums as opposed to just collections of songs, you know. And Pet Sounds being one of those groundbreaking works, which not only in its own right stands as a testament to his genius, but also spurred other acts on, which is also equally important, I think.
Yeah, I mean, we say the same thing every time I talk about Motorhead or any of the other formative bands in the metal genre. Like, their real contribution wasn't even just their own music; it was the number of bands that they inspired to go on and do and carry their sound forward.
Absolutely. I mean, an incredible legacy of people trying to mirror or mimic or be inspired by that. The Beatles themselves, of course, directly inspired by Pet Sounds to make to do some of the stuff they did on Revolver and then Sgt. Pepper. Even the Stones altered their sound somewhat in the Satanic Majesties era because they were so impressed with Pet Sounds to introduce more harmonic work into their material, and that little bit of kind of psychedelic edge that the Beach Boys so clean-cut-ily did. Is that a word? Clean-cuttedly. Yeah. The Who, now Pete Townsend and Keith Moon and were originally very dismissive of Pet Sounds, but Pete later repented and said, no, in actual fact, I was just being a ordinary git. I was actually quite jealous of the production quality, jealous of the harmonies, and the fact that he'd built these structures that made me then want to do my own little mini operas, like A Quick One and then Tommy. So even he took inspiration from the Beach Boys, even at a time when his band with Monterey and Woodstock were surpassing the passé Beach Boys at that time. But I could also point to, you know, Fleetwood Mac and Lindsey Buckingham. Lush harmonies, beautiful arrangements, fantastic instrumentation to back that up, sparkling almost. You think of certain Fleetwood Mac songs in the Lindsey Buckingham era and compare them to some of the Beach Boy stuff like California Girls. There's a definite lineage there for me.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, and so that their influence, and even in the Eagles and other acts like that from California, lots of that harmony-laden sound. Now, they didn't invent that, but Brian took it to an insane level of perfection, in my opinion.
They're one of those guys, like, you know, they're the epitome of surf rock, even though it didn't start with them. They kind of polished it to a point where it broke out of the genre class and into, you know, top 10 hits.
It is, yeah. It's a curious thing because they themselves, as is famously recounted, were not. Brian Wilson didn't really even like the water, never mind the beach. Right. Although he wasn't like he was unathletic. He was a quarterback at football in high school, played baseball. He wanted to be a baseball player, but then caught the music bug. They didn't, other than Dennis, They didn't. None of them were really into that surf thing or the beach thing. And most of the surf music till that point had been, such as it was, had been instrumentals, the Dick Dale type sound.
Yeah.
They took it into a vocal thing and combined that rock and roll, Chuck Berry rock and roll thing, and took it in a different direction. So, whilst it was seen as surf music, it was completely different from what surf music had been. So that was like Surfing USA bears very little relation to something like Dick Dale might have done, or not that there's anything wrong with either one of them, of course. So just even at that point, Brian was putting his own stamp on what the Beach Boys were doing. Like it was a new. I don't think anybody had heard something like Surfing USA.
No, I don't think so. And even if you weren't part of the surf scene in California in the early '60s, I'm guaranteeing you knew about it because that's where the girls were.
Well, there's another thing, yes. And that's why, from a British perspective, we were all, and Britain continued to love the Beach Boys long after they were seen as passé in the US.
Yeah, the US has this tendency to move on from musical trends very quickly.
Done. Yeah, we're done with you now.
It's like that was 2 years ago.
We're done with you.
We're on to something else now.
Yeah, they were still enormously popular in the late 60s, early 70s in Britain. The concerts, number one hits like Do It Again, that wasn't a big hit in America, and so on. And it was part of that appeal, though, I think, was for us, is coming from rainy, windswept, horrible Britain, was these images, these glimpses into the California lifestyle.
Yeah, you can't get two environments much more different in terms of weather conditions than Southern California
and Scotland. Like, how do you know it's a Scottish summer? Because it's raining vertically, not horizontally. There's not a lot of beach time. We have some lovely beaches, but not many girls in bikinis in them.
Well, it's like people forget why Ireland is so green. It's like because it rains there.
Because it freaking rains. That's right. So that was part of the appeal. But Brian was able to translate, and Mike Love, who co-wrote a lot of the songs, was able to translate that into these little mini pop epics with the hot rods and girls and surfing and the beach, but at the same time, for a band that was known for that kind of material, Brian was always writing about being alone in his room or doing things alone and introspection and wistfulness for other things. So very interesting duality.
Well, I mean, especially in the early 60s, you had to have both. I mean, you could do introspective songs about deeper topics and stuff like that, but the pop songs would get you paid.
Oh yeah, and there was as
long as you have a couple of hits that can keep the money coming in, then you can do whatever you want.
So Scottish beaches are actually called sand traps. That's true. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time on them. Sand traps, that is, when I used to golf. Well, welcome everybody to the show, by the way, in the chat. It's good to see you all. As D-Bud is rightly pointing out and is putting the link on the YouTube side, and today we're doing the split show again. We're going to be on for about an hour on YouTube, just chatting, showing a few images, chatting about some of the records or favorites. And then second half, we'll be over to Rumble, and we'll just play some tunes for an hour and have some fun playing those. I'd like to say hello to Low Spec Linux Gaming over on Rumble. Can't show your chat, unfortunately. They still haven't got that facility on Streamlabs.
At a certain point, I have to think it's intentional.
Oh, I think it is.
That they don't like Rumble and they don't want to help it any more than they can.
Yeah, so
either that or YouTube's paying them not to.
Figuring out my own way around it at some point. Yeah, so Low Spec says there wasn't a great Beach Boys plus Mike Oldfield concert around 1980. I think there was, but I know the Beach Boys played a couple of big gigs at Wembley and other places in Britain around that time. It's very possible there was a festival that they did with. They were a huge festival draw in the 70s and 80s in Britain. And then they became the same in America again, the Beach Boys, after I think it was the 1980 Washington, D.C. thing.
Well, I mean, when you look at it at the timeline, a lot of the kids who listened to the Beach Boys in their teens and early 20s were now in their 30s, had money, and had kids, and they were taking them to see one of their favorite bands from childhood. Right about
Yeah.
1980.
Well, as Mike Love said, we started to get the 8 to 80 thing going on. People from the age of 8 to the age of 80, which is great if you're a band, because then you get tons of
It means you've got,
fans.
3 generations of fans.
Yeah, and by 1980, the people had rediscovered them and then remembered how great those hits were, and there was a lot of hits. I got a slide here, which, I mean, there's no way we're going to in 1 hour conquer the entirety of the Beach Boys or Brian Wilson's career. This is really just a heartfelt tribute, and then we'll, if we want, there's lots of great documentaries out there. Well, even Disney did a good one last year. Joe's waiting to get in, so I'll just have to let him in a second. I'll let him in while this slide's on stream, so he can't interrupt us. Oh, he's not saying anything. There you go. Well, I can't hear him if he is. Beach Boys says
over 1 million records sold.
That's over. Hello, Joe. Hey, Joe.
How you doing?
All right, mate. Good to see you. 100 million records sold worldwide, and who knows how many in total, because those are sketchy figures if you think about it. 38 million of those were albums worldwide. 22.4 million in the US, 4.4 million UK albums. They were hugely popular in the UK. 37 top 40 hits in the USA, including 4 number 1s. 28 top 40 hits in the UK, which puts them in like 4th or 5th place of all time, maybe even higher, and 2 number 1s. Pet Sounds, regardless of, and I would say there's aspects of Pet Sounds, it's not a rock and roll album, and it's a beautiful album, but not rock and roll. It's regularly ranks at number 1 or 2 in these polls that you have of greatest albums of all time. So it has that respect. And then Brian wrote and recorded over 400 songs in his career, and they are often ranked as the top US band of all time. Now, that's obviously subjective. Everyone's got their own preference, but that's still a pretty impressive set of stats for 3 brothers, a cousin, and a friend, a high school friend from, where was it? Hawthorne? Wherever that is in California. California is just one place to me. What do you think of that, Joe?
Man, those numbers sound skewed, don't they? Sure seems like they should be more than that.
Well, this is it. You never know when it comes to record sales, particularly as in the 60s and 70s. Record companies were a bit shifty about reporting that because they didn't want to pay royalties. They
didn't want to pay the artists.
So you say 100 million, it probably means 200 million.
Right.
But there's not many bands. I mean, now they have people that can stream 500 million tunes and they're still crap. Not many bands can say that. And I think this is just my personal opinion. Growing up, if someone asked me to name an American band, I'd immediately say the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
That's how strong their identity was.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for a period there in the 60s, they were the most identifiable band in the United States, probably the same as the Beatles were for England.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And I think it takes something to be able to do that. Now, I mean, Lord Dawson's Beach Boys are great, not the best US band of all time. It's a subjective thing, but I think there's
really
many.
Is. It depends on your age. It depends on a lot of factors.
They're one CCR.
Best band ever.
Yeah, I mean, there's but when you look at the body of work, they're always going to be in that discussion.
The thing that sticks out the most out of all of those numbers you just spit out, all I could think was the Prince of his time, 400 songs. I mean,
yeah. Well, there's very few people
have beaten
songs,
that, guys.
Yeah,
I mean,
maybe Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney have beaten that. I don't know, but I mean, it doesn't mean they're all
Prince,
great.
It's notoriously this is rumor. I don't know if it's true or not, but from what many people say, Prince had enough music written by the time he was 25 to produce an album every year for the rest of his life. So
Lord thought like a true hoser, like a true minimum effort puppy. is going for the Eagles, the easy pickings of the greatest
years.
There's
nothing wrong with the Eagles. God, don't be belittling the Eagles. There's nothing wrong with the Eagles, bro. Come on.
And the crazy one.
They started off as a backup band for Linda Ronstadt.
I know.
Look how well they did.
The Eagles are truly a magnificent band. There's no doubt about that. But the Beach Boys started a little earlier.
Oh, the Beach Boys are bigger. We know that. They're big, But.
They maybe had an advantage. They started earlier. And they had, it's a fascinating thing for me. They had their early hits before the Beatles had even, they were ahead of that curve. In that dead period between the sort of downfall of the original rock and roll guys and the rise of the British invasion and then rock music,
the Beach Boys
were in that. It was them or Motown.
Yeah, well, we were talking about that during my History of Rock and Roll stream, where right after you had the day the music died, the American scene was looking for a new sound to replace all that OG rock and roll stuff, and these guys were one option.
They were, absolutely. And they carved a very unique path at that time and became this massive American hit-making machine around the world. But at a time, the only Motown, I think, was even matching that. The Flying Burrito Brothers, one of my favorite bands of all time, also had a huge part to say in the Eagles sound. So, particularly as Bernie Leadon, my favorite Eagle, was in the Flying Burrito Brothers. I'm the country guy who goes, I'm a Bernie Leadon guy. So good discussion. I just want to say that whilst we're paying tribute to Brian here, he's now got the band back together with his brothers.
Yeah.
Which I like to think that's actually happening.
They're sitting
there playing Chuck Berry stuff and whatever. Obviously we lost Dennis Wilson back in 1983, the bit of the wild boy, good friend of some people who may have had a bad reputation in California in the 60s.
Just a little.
Charles Manson.
That's touched upon in the Tarantino movie too, because Charles comes to his house looking for him.
That's right. So Dennis was a little bit of a wild man and hanging out on the scene. So we lost Dennis in 83. Carl Wilson, with the voice of an angel, passed away in 1998. Far too soon. Cancer, I believe. It was a bit of a real horrible experience. And then Brian, the guy probably everybody thought wouldn't last the longest, the older brother, recently, and just before his birthday as well, which was June the 20th. He just missed his birthday. So they're all together again. So R.I.P. to the Wilson brothers. What a great trio.
And clearly musical talent just runs in that family, because you had these three with the Beach Boys, and then you have Brian's daughters, Nancy and Ann, forming the core of art.
I'm sure Brian's dad, Murray, would have said, I was the most talented one, but then that caused a lot of problems later. It is shocking that... So R.I.P. to the Wilsons. I mean, we would have got around to talking about them soon enough anyway, but Brian passing just made we had to do it. I love this picture of him playing bass. He was actually more of a piano guy in that he taught himself to play piano, but on stage somebody had to play bass.
Right.
So I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Writers are pianists.
Yeah.
Most of them are.
But he says
the piano is a very easy instrument to, create melodies on and plan it out, because it's all in one plane, very clinical, where if I hit this key, that sound's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's not if it's not an easy instrument to sling around your neck and pose with.
No.
But it's funny because Bruce Johnston, when he replaced Brian in the touring band, was a piano player as well, and he had to learn bass overnight so he could play all this stuff live, because no, you got to play bass on stage. Oh, okay, right. We actually replaced, strictly speaking, he replaced Glenn Campbell, who was in the Beach Boys for 6 months. But there you go.
I did not know that Glenn Campbell was part of that band for 6 months. He
toured with them. He was in the touring band for about 6 months because he was part of the Wrecking Crew and worked with Brian on all the recordings. So they said, "Yeah, I'm kind of retiring from touring. so I need someone to step in for me. And Glenn Campbell was the guy for a while.
Wow.
There's a lot of pictures of him with the Beach Boys stripy shirts or whatever. And then Bruce Johnston when Glenn Campbell's solo career took off. The three brothers in Hawthorne. They were born in Inglewood. Brian was born in Inglewood. I have no idea where Inglewood is or Hawthorne. I just know it's Southern California.
They're right in LA, pretty much.
And his dad was a musician and machinist. And then obviously Dennis and Carl, his younger brothers, they moved to Hawthorne when he was 2 years old. And immediately all the neighbours like Dennis Marks and his cousin Mike Love would give them shit for being from Inglewood. So obviously there was a local rivalry. This is not an early shot of the Beach Boys. Brian was fascinated by music from a very early age, and one of the bands or acts he was into was the Four Freshmen, who had all these great harmonies. So he would take their records on the gramophone, play like 78 as well, play a bit of it, take it off and go to the piano and try and figure out the bits, the different bits of it, and he loved those harmonies, and that was a big influence on him.
The harmonizing of that band. That's something that the Eagles had in common with them too.
Yeah,
two great harmonizers.
Oh, great harmonizers.
Inglewood is a suburb of Los Angeles. It's towards the coast.
Yeah, more coastal. Yeah. Carol Kay, as Anonymous saying, is in the Wrecking Crew. Played all the bass on the Wrecking Crew stuff. Because at that point, it was Brian in the studio with them recording whilst the band were out touring. So there was two things going on. Carl did come to a lot of the sessions as well. He was the most involved in the music. Otherwise, the band would come up and just do all the harmony parts and the singing. That eventually changed when Brian withdrew a little bit from recording. But so they had all those, like Hal Blaine on the drums, Carol Kay on the bass and so on. But he actually got his brothers to sing harmony on these early, and Chuck Berry hit them as well. So they went, oh, rock and roll, that's pretty good. Carl particularly and Dennis were into the rock and roll. Chuck Berry, who does get a songwriting credit on, is it Surfing USA?
Yeah, I think it is.
So he got his brothers to sing the harmonies when he was doing this stuff on the piano, and then experimenting with reel-to-reel recording, him playing piano, his brother Carl, and David Marks, who was in the Beach Boys in the early days playing guitar. In fact, David Marks is in some of the touring lineups now. He was the neighbour. He's like the guy you see on 4 album covers, but nobody ever knew his name. I'm a big fan of David Marks just because of that. And then his cousin Mike Love, and then Al Jardine. Al Jardine was Brian's high school classmate and still a very close friend right up to the end. There was a bit of a schism, but Al was always a very close friend of his. And then a few names like Carl and the Passions, which ended up being an album name, the Pendletones, and then Candix Records released Surfin' in November 1961, and they decided they didn't like the name the Pendletones. This is the record label, so they changed it to the Beach Boys without even asking the band, and a legend was born.
Wow. They got given a name because they didn't like it.
That's right.
The producers didn't like it.
The record company didn't like it. They went, nah, we'll call them the Beach Boys. So they went, well, that's not our name, but it stuck. Here they are in, I think this is 1961. Mike Love he didn't really play the saxophone, but everybody had to have a sax in the band at the time, so he kind of picked it up and took it out. So David Marks is the guy with his back turned on the guitar, I think. Anyway, Al Jardine and David Marks were kind of in and out of the band at various points. Al Jardine was on the first single, Surfin', and then he said, oh, there's no future in this. I got to go get a proper job. So he went to college to do something, and then they kept bugging him to come back. And eventually David Marks left because he fell out with Murray Wilson. And they said, okay, I'll come back to the band. And he did. This is 1962, I think, this picture, in a high school somewhere. They went through all the bands did, played in high schools, played at fairs and so on and so on.
What's up with the plaid? What's up with the plaid, man?
It's not very surfy, is it?
No, it's not. Not unless you're
surfy.
trying to look like the station wagon that you're putting the surfboards on top of. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. So I just wanted to show. I've got the images. I don't have a huge amount of images today, but before we show some more band images, so I mean, you've got all these. This is a great montage of all the singles, or a lot of the singles covers. This is when I wish I'd been a better record collector. I would have had all of these. But the Surfin', the first song, November 1961, and did sell about 40,000 copies in the US, reached number 75 in the US charts. Not bad for a band or unknown band on a local label in LA.
Right.
But it was enough to get them major attention. Of course, Murray was their manager and gig booker and whatever at that time, de facto manager, publishing guy. He was good at, because he had some connection with the record industry, he was good at plugging them. So he got Capitol's attention, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll sign these guys up for 7-year contract, whatever, at, half a cent per record or whatever the hell they would get.
It was low.
People who think the record industry is abusive now, it used to be.
Oh my God, back then.
That's what the Beatles got. They got like a farthing per double-sided disc, and a farthing is like half a halfpenny or something. It's just some ridiculous amount. And where's all the money going?
Well, the record producers are getting it all, yeah?
That's what bands would be saying. I've sold 5 million records, and yet I'm broke. I'm having to borrow money from my mother. So Surfin', the first one, and it didn't even have a drummer. It was just Brian hitting a snare drum with a pencil. Al Jardine playing a stand-up bass. It was just like very rudimentary, but Brian basically produced it. And I guess the rest was history after that. Surfin' Safari.
409.
409. This is with David Marks, not Al Jardine, but so that Surfin' Safari, big US hit in 1962, and then of course that gave the title to the first album. We'll look at some more of the songs later. I just wanted to run through some of these great images. This is probably the best image.
That's the most iconic image I've seen of the Beach Boys. Like, that's the one you see everywhere.
Yeah, that's peak Beach Boys. I don't know, that might be 1964 maybe. 63, 64. Al Jardine's back. They've got the stripy shirts. They even look happy.
What a different world that was, man. Good Lord.
It's just such a beautiful, beautiful image. Lovely lads. There's Brian on the bass with David Marks behind him on the guitar. But Brian kind of put on a lot of weight pretty quickly. So did Carl, to be honest. But, I do like this. I love this. We're going to show a lot of these clips on Rumble of them playing, but I love it, Brian on the bass. And you can tell when you watch the clips who's singing which part, which is always great. Brian had a nice high part on some of these. They all switched the lead vocals around, which is pretty neat. So
a lot of bands struggle to find one singer that can do their songs really well, and these guys had 4.
That's right, yeah. Even Dennis had some lead vocals, like Do You Want to Dance? And but this is Hollywood Bowl, I think. It looks a bit.
Yeah, it looks like it.
This is the shiny suit era.
Wow.
You don't want to wear that in the California sun. That polyester's going to melt pretty quick.
Yeah.
So will the hair gel. This is a classic picture. This is when Brian stopped touring really in about late 64. He actually hated touring. Hated it. He was that's why he wrote songs like In My Room. He wanted to just be in the studio recording. He hated being in front of audiences. Now, he conquered that many years later in the latter days and went out and toured a lot with various musicians, but he absolutely hated it. Yeah, he's still funny and he's still enjoying himself. I mean, hell, making money in chicks or
come on, chicks make you get over a lot of stuff you don't like.
Absolutely, yeah. It's just such a great. I love these pictures. Love it. I love looking at the old clips of the Beach Boys and bands and that, But then he got into the studio thing in a big way, and it's interesting because he had to convey all these ideas he had to these experienced session guys in the studio without being a formal orchestrator or composer. But he managed to do it because when you listen to California Girls or any of those songs, he got it across to them because you get that beautiful sound that he wanted. He had this thing. I think it was a condition that he had. Synesthesia. Synesthesia and sound obsession. He has described experiencing synesthesia, a neurological condition where sounds evoke colors or shapes. And so it was soundscapes he was trying to craft, and then later on it was little bits welded together to do that. So you got like Good Vibrations is like 4 different sections, but it was like a sensory experience for him. He said there was sound would explode out of his chest. Possibly that was the drugs. I don't know.
That could be too.
Hello.
But became a real master of the studio, which is where his passion really good. So in later years, even after the issues he had, he kind of dropped out a lot of. Carl took over quite a lot of the band because he was leading the touring band. He took over a lot of the music, but he was still there. And then he went through all that period of where he was basically under the spell of, was it Landry, whatever the guy's name, and like this guru guy who wanted songwriting credits and everything and said he could cure Brian of all this stuff and whatever. No, there's a great documentary. Forgive me for saying that Disney made a great documentary, but they did.
What? Blasphemer.
The Beach Boys documentary they did last year, and people criticize it. Oh, it's a bit of a sugar coating. Well, that's all I want. I don't want layers of dirt. I want the good stuff.
Yeah.
And so
I don't need to know every chick they banged and how they had 50 babies.
And how they hated each other's guts and blah, blah, blah.
I don't need any of that.
I wanted it was a beautiful movie with all the good stories.
Mm-hmm.
And they got the guys back together because there's been various divisions, particularly with Mike Love and Brian Wilson over the years. But they were all visited him before he died. That this was on the beach where the first album cover was made. So if I just find that image, this one. So that's the same beach. They got them sitting on the beach having a drink and a chat. And
now that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's a great one.
So God knows
that
how many
looked like a beach mobile right there.
That's right.
An old truck.
Do you think that thing wouldn't get bogged down in that sand?
No, hell no, it wouldn't. That thing's made of iron.
But I mean, did you really take your own palm trees with you in California?
No, the palm trees, that's dressing it up. But yeah, the vehicle, I could see surfboards strapped to the top of that, no doubt.
So they got them back together on the same beach. So Al Jardine, David Marks, Brian, Mike Love, and Bruce Johnston. So it's a heartwarming picture, really. It's nice. It's a great documentary. There are other good ones. There's one called Endless Summer out there, which is a really good movie.
Who knew Disney could actually cover a classic and not fuck it up?
Yeah, and they resisted the temptation to make it all. I mean, they didn't race swap any of these guys.
True, there's not a single black lesbian in the picture. So,
there's not one lesbian in this picture, although...
How old is this documentary now? Come on. How old is it? When did it come out?
Last year, just last year.
Oh, okay. Well, that's amazing then. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
They managed to get one of the few sane writers left at Disney to do that.
That's right, yeah. So a beautiful picture, and it was nice to see David Marks getting in on it because he was a very close friend of them all. And he only left the band because he hated Murray Wilson's guts. But they argued like shit. And David Marks was when they started made the first album, and he was officially in the band when Al Jardine was still out. He was too young to sign a contract. He was just a kid. Like, he had to get his parents to sign the contract for him. So. But Murray didn't want him in there because he wasn't part of the family, if you know what I mean. So, that's a great picture, though. I do like that one. But the albums, I mean, they were turning these albums out. The hits, Surf and Safari, they took off nationally then. Mainly with songs written with Brian, some co-written with Mike Love, and then there was a guy called Gary Usher, also a friend of Brian's, helped. Brian produced the album. He never got credited for producing at that time. They said the actual producer guy was like, "Oh, just do a take. That's it. We're done." Brian was like, "No," and he would actually take over and produce it. The named guy didn't do anything. Guy Capitol gave them. But this album really created that sound. Yeah, Surf and Safari, 409.
Yeah, don't just glaze over the fact that he did a lot of the producing, because back then they didn't want them producing their own music. Buddy Holly was the first guy that they ever let have the reins of his own studio, you know.
Well, they had to do it themselves. He created his own one, Buddy Holly. But yeah, I think a lot of inspiration, you could draw a lineage between Buddy Holly and Brian Wilson in that respect.
Sure.
And I'm sure Brian Wilson would have been very aware of what Buddy Holly was doing. They were heavily into the rock and roll stuff. So that would have been his inspiration. But yeah, the hits just then started on, keep on coming. You got Surfing USA, 10 albums up to Pet Sounds. That's 10 albums in 3 years or something, for 3 to 4 years. Within this period, though, he critically, amongst all the other influences he had, like we mentioned the Four Freshmen, we mentioned the rock and roll stuff, the Everly Brothers, he was heavily influenced by classical music, like George Gershwin and stuff like that he loved as well. But he also then heard, I think it was 1963, Be My Baby by the Ronettes. And he went, oh, that's incredible. How do I get that sound?
Right.
How do I get that wall of sound? And he became a Phil Spector devotee, only in the musical sense. And in fact, he actually, I've got a clip here. There's a great Brian Wilson site with, look at all these great photographs on it. It covers everything about his career. It's brianwilson.com. It's a very good website. There's a clip of him talking about Phil
Spector. You were on it.
I think that's. So I've got to go to the right section. So this is right from about here.
What do you?
Can you hear them?
In terms of what, as somebody who has written so many great songs yourself, what do you think is the greatest pop song ever written?
I'll probably Be My Baby by the Ronettes. Be the best one I think that I know of.
And you and Phil, you've admired Phil Spector for a long time, haven't you?
For a long time.
What is it about Phil Spector's sound that really does it for you?
Well, he gets the musicians play real hard, and he builds a foundation and a wall of sound that he makes.
You've got a song that you played last night, which sounded like almost like a homage to Phil Spector yesterday. I think was it Maybe Baby or
Be My Baby.
Yeah, no, you played something last night which sounded it seemed like you were sort of paying tribute to Phil Spector last night.
I don't know which one you mean, but I know we were doing.
Yeah, I remember I read one that Bob Dylan once said that great songs are things that they're just hanging in the air and you just pluck them out. Do you think like that, or do you think that you have to write them yourself, or do you think that the California Girls was always there, Good Vibrations was always there, and you just discovered it?
Both. Well, they have both of those, yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, that's Be My Baby was his favourite song of all time. Mm-hmm. And you could tell because that's the way he started to move, even using the Wrecking Crew to do stuff. And he just, that sound. So it went from that, I'm not discounting the early albums, like Surfing Safari and Surfing USA. The sound got bigger as he realised, we can do something bigger here. Because a lot of these are the surf sound that they had. Then, okay, well, get a song like Little Deuce Coupe. It's got just a little more going on in it. And then In My Room, it's got a little more going on in it.
It's probably my dad's favorite song by him.
Oh, yeah. And it's like the Beatles. It was like, okay, this is still a pop album, but there's something else going on in this song. Mm-hmm. A little it was progression, as it were. So I just wanted to thank Nick, our great friend Nick Visor, 32 flavors of Nick Visor, $2 from Nick. Yo, dude, reach out when you can, don't matter how. Do you need me to reach out right now, Nick? Or do you need me to do it after the show?
You need him to touch you, Nick?
Touch me. So Nick, you must get a clip for that. There's got to be a clip for you donating at $2. All I gotta do is figure out a good one for it to be. It might be this. There you go. That's for you, Nick. After. Okay, good. So I wanted to show the album covers because first of all, I love them. So Little Deuce Coupe. That is a great cover.
Yeah, it is.
Be true to your school.
Maybe might have made it a little better if the camera angle was above the engine and pointing down. Maybe.
It would have.
That would have been the only way to improve that. Man.
I mean, given the fact that later on hippie, psychedelic, anti-American, whatever stuff came in later, Be True to Your School was probably the very opposite of that.
Yes, it was.
And then Shut Down Volume 2 with Fun, 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 The Warmth of the Sun, another beautiful song. Beautiful song.
Which I love how they wrote Fun, Fun, Fun about a Thunderbird, and yet they have its competitor on the.
That's right, yeah. Let's blame the record company. In the parking lot. Well, what happens in the parking lot? I always wanted to know. Don't Worry Baby, another beautiful song. You can see the introspective Brian coming through in these albums. And then all summer long.
I saw Why Do Fools Fall in Love. That's a cover.
It's a cover, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They did do covers. He covered a lot of their favorite songs, and particularly the girl group stuff. The Beatles did that too, of course. They loved the girl group stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a girl group one, though. Why Do Fools Fall in Love? That was somebody will tell me in the chat. It was a doo-wop song, doo-wop group.
I'll look it up.
All summer long, I Get Around, Little Honda, Wendy, it's great. Girls on the Beach, the Beach Boys Christmas album. These were all like every 6 months, album. Little Saint Nick, and they, of course, Capitol would be chopping them all up. Do You Want to Dance?
Featuring Frankie Lyman.
Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. Yeah, it was Help Me Rhonda Again. Dance, 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 When I Grew Up to Be a Man, Summer Days and Summer Nights. So this is where they started to get the really lush sound with California Girls. Mm-hmm. And then their version of Then I Kissed Her. He was starting to work with the Wrecking Crew, get that big. So the opening California Girls has got to be one of the greatest openings of a song ever. That beautiful descending picked guitar sound, absolutely beautiful. Beach Boys Party, yes they do. And then Pet Sounds, which was a very different album. But singles wise, and we're going to be playing some of these over in Rumble soon. Hails Axe, good to see you, mate. You starting to get into Surfing USA, Surfer Girl. They're still cutting that same board.
Yeah.
Fun, Fun, Fun.
Which songs did I give you? I know.
Yeah, I've got your. So you mentioned some favorites. So you said, I'm going to hold you to it. Surfing USA, California Dreamin', which was at the 1980s or 90s.
Yeah,
great cover and with a great video. Great cover of California Dreamin'. Da Do Run Run, and Good Vibrations.
Yep.
Chris, who isn't here yet, said, Help Me Rhonda, Fun, 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 Surfing Safari, and Sloop John B. Which was a song they actually tried to record when they did Surfing. It actually was something they were playing about with as well. Mm-hmm. Pope mentioned, Wouldn't It Be Nice? Because that's what Dad
man.
liked.
Yeah,
I forgot all about that one, Pope. Good call.
My dad's favorite from them. So,
and then you mentioned Kokomo, which Brian Wilson wasn't on, but never mind.
Oh.
But Carl was.
It was a big hit.
Hit.
I hated the movie it was in. Oh.
And I couldn't cut mine down. I've got, God Only Knows would be my number one pick every time.
Oh, okay, there you go.
And then California Girls, Do It Again. I love the song Do It Again. Do You Want to Dance? Because I love Dennis's vocal on it. Don't Worry Baby, Breakaway, The Warmth of the Sun. Those are the ones I picked. We'll play the good thing is most of them are 2 minutes long, so we can play lots of them.
Yeah, you could play a lot of them in an hour over there.
This is back when, if you wanted it on the radio, it was 3 minutes or less, and they were pretty strict about that.
Pretty strict. That's 2 minutes and 1 second. Can we get rid of a second? Can we fade it out earlier?
So can we shave this little 1 second out?
Until Queen came along and destroyed all that. Right?
Yeah.
So Dennis being the wild man of the slightly wild man of rock in the middle. That was just his vocal. Do You Want to Dance? Help Me Run. Trees. Bands were always posing in trees in that era.
Well, because trees are cheap.
Trees are cheap.
Expensive.
You don't have to pay them royalties or ask for permission. I just love these covers, and this is just we're not in no way this is a deep analysis. We're just covering just to show the scope and breadth of their hit career. And this is just the Beach Boys in the 60s. This is without anything that was done after.
Yeah, this is when they were at the height of their powers. They were doing stuff well into the 1970s and 80s.
So Barbara Ann. Now, do you want to hear a Matrix story? So yesterday I'm sitting listening to Barbara Ann. Literally, Barbara Ann is playing, and a friend of mine sends me a parody video called Bomb, 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 Iran.
I used it on a short for my show yesterday with my brother.
That's from 1980, But I fell out of my seat because I was listening to Barbara Ann when I clicked on this video on the phone. I thought, how is that happening?
Oh, man. Yeah.
Show me the monkey, Stephen. Sloop John B, which is just like, I mean, I love the guitar thing that's going on in the background. It's beautiful. No one's going to claim it's heavy rock. It's beautiful pop music. Yep. Beautiful pop. Shimmering. It shimmers. And those voices. Wouldn't it be nice? Is there a sheep in there? Because otherwise that's a disturbing picture.
That's not a sheep right in front of the guy.
No, those are all goats.
This is my one problem with pet sounds. I don't want the pets to make any sounds. I'm just kidding. Or is he? God only knows. To me, absolute perfection. I mean, it's Paul McCartney's favourite song.
Is it?
Yeah. There's two songs Paul McCartney wishes he could have written. One is Ferry Cross the Mersey by Jerry and the Pacemakers, and the other is this one. And he just, I thought, because this Beatles Beach Boys thing, they really spurred each other on in this period. They saw it as a challenge, but I think it's this clip. Yeah. You're going to see two very old-looking guys, and this was 11 years ago.
The chronology a little bit now, coming a little bit more up to date with a choice from the Beach Boys from Paul.
Yeah, Brian Wilson sort of proved himself to be like a really amazing composer.
Yeah.
And I was into chords and harmonies and stuff at that time. And we ended up, it's kind of like a rivalry.
Yeah.
We'd put a song out and Brian would hear it and he'd do one, which is nice. It's like me and John. You kind of try and top each other all the time. But he eventually came out with this God Only Knows.
That was Pet Sounds time, right?
On Pet Sounds, yeah. I just think it's a great song. Melody, harmonies, words,
Yeah, he had a wonderful feel. Very bluesy, I think he is.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of soul.
It's a great song. I love it. It's just it's my favorite Beach Boys song.
Yeah, there was a lot of rivalry but respect between those guys, because without Pet Sounds, Revolver may not have been quite the same, and Sgt. Pepper certainly probably wouldn't have been. So it's just like a nuclear arms race.
Approved.
Yeah. I've got another clip I want to play while we've got the time here. I'll probably get claimed for all of these, but this is Brian Wilson talking about the Beatles. This one's a little less complimentary, but it's funny.
What was your reaction, Brian, the first time you heard I Want to Hold Your Hand?
Oh, I was so jealous. I was jealous of the Beatles. I couldn't believe how jealous I was of the Beatles. I couldn't believe it. I was so jealous.
It's my favorite Beatles
With
song.
every new single, were you more jealous?
No, actually, we got rolling a little bit on our own thing, too, so it was pretty cool.
Do you remember the first time you heard I Want to Hold Your Hand?
I sure do. I was at my mother-in-law's house in West Hollywood, California, and they go, and here they are from England, from London, England, the Beatles. I want to hold your hand, everything. Oh, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
She Loves You was the next one.
Oh, She Loves You was fantastic.
From Me to You.
From Me to You, I saw her standing there.
He actually says
it was a trip right across the Beatles. We were kind of like rivals, but we turned each other on. It was like we inspired each other to do better. Before the Beatles and the Beach Boys, everything was just Moon and June, but we gave it a new twist in the sound.
Do you remember the first time you heard Rubber Soul?
I remember I heard it sometime in 1965. 1965, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Late 1965.
Uh-huh.
And I was smoking pot. And I just tripped out on that hill. I said, it blew me out so much. It sounded like a collection of Beatle folk songs. That's the best way I can describe it. Kind of like Beatles. I don't know, just something very special how all the songs kind of were like a collection of songs that belong together, like Pet Sounds.
It's not the one, but yeah, I mean that was interesting. But there's another interview where somebody says, "Well, how do you think? I Want to Hold Your Hand was a really good record." He says, "It wasn't that good. I was just impressed with the fact that they were successful."
I misspoke. Saw Her Standing There is my favorite song.
Yeah, well, that's a great record. But he said it wasn't that good. But so he was actually, I could have done better. It was quite funny. He was jealous of the success, not in a sense, but not of the quality of the records at that time. He thought it was fascinating.
Sounds like he was jealous of their talent that he couldn't do
but
that.
he's honest about it. But he said it wasn't that good a record, He could hear the flaws in it, and we could have done better. But that's a different interview. But he was kind of half joking, But yeah, they had that great rivalry going on.
And the thing is too, like how many times have Brian and Paul probably met over the years and talked about it between the two of them? And now it's just kind of banter back and forth between the two of them.
Tons of times. But it's Brian was very direct, apparently. Like he wasn't, even though he was an introspective guy, he was quite direct. He would say, "No, that's crap." Or no, we're not doing that. Which is why he struggled with his father, because his father was really domineering and tried to record him, and his father would try and belittle him, and eventually he said, "Get the fuck out of here, out of the studio, and you're fired as our manager." And because his father thought he was something, and it's true, in the early days he really did well for them, but they made the mistake of letting him control the publishing.
Whoops.
And what did he do? He sold the publishing out from under them. In 66 or 67 or 68, whatever. 750. He sold the entire Brian Wilson Beach Boys catalog for $750,000.
What?
I can only imagine what that's worth now.
Indeed, it's worth tens of millions or whatever, hundreds of millions. And at the time, Brian was devastated him. How could you do this to me? These are my songs. But we've seen that happen to other artists. But I mean, his own father, and his father said, "Well, you guys are on the way down now. Got to cash in while we can."
And that's a big difference between, you hear this happening to other bands, but it's usually some scumbag producer that, signed him to a really shitty deal right off the bat, not your own father.
Right. Somebody like Colonel Tom Parker,
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Well, his father was, he wanted to be a star. He thought he was a top musician himself.
The record industry is just strange, man. I go back to Buddy Holly a lot, but when his first record came out, he didn't even know it had been released.
Yeah. It's just anything they can do to screw you.
He heard it on the radio.
It's like the movie industry. It's Hollywood. They will screw you.
Oh, yeah.
Even your own family will screw you for $1 in the music industry. It's
like I said earlier, you think it's bad now. Back in these days, it was way worse because the record labels had control of everything.
Oh, an iron grip.
Like you couldn't just produce your own records. You couldn't, release it on YouTube and get it played anyway.
I mean,
the radio stations and the record labels, they were the gatekeepers of whether you got heard or not.
I mean, you could have a small indie thing going on, but you would never get distributed nationally, and you wouldn't get the airplay. So
and you would probably never make enough to really make a career out of it.
Yeah,
without radio play.
And so good. I don't want to talk about good. We're going to go over to Rumble in a few minutes. Hopefully, everyone will join us there. Because
come by and check out.
Come by because we're going to play some songs and talk about them. So
I was going to mention, if you want to see a good movie about what the record industry was like back then, watch That Thing You Do with Tom.
Perfect example of them.
Yes, perfect example.
So Pet Sounds was his magnum opus, as it were, and if you listen to it, it's a very different album from the stuff that came before. Very quiet, introspective, very almost orchestral, without having too much orchestra on it. with very quiet songs. I mean, very few of these songs, like maybe Wouldn't It Be Nice, could be seen as a standard Beach Boys sound. But a lot of them, like Caroline No, and It Just Wasn't Made for the Times, God Only Knows, very quiet, very introspective. Wasn't a huge, as Davina pointed out, was not a huge success in the US. It did very poorly compared to their previous stuff because it was so different. Massive success in Britain. Like, absolutely top #1 album. Everyone loved it. Tons of covers of the songs, hit singles, whatever. So that's when they started to go through a period of doing great in Britain, not doing quite so well commercially in the UK. And it was falling apart after that for Brian because they tried to make the Smile album. He just couldn't get across what he wanted. He's making songs about vegetables and fire trucks, and it wasn't coming across, and he was the drugs and the mental problems, and it started to fall apart for him. But very much respected now, this album. I mean, the respect for it is enormous. It eventually sold a lot of copies over the years. And God Only Knows is on it, which is enough to just make it legendary, in my opinion. And it's got Sloop John B, which is, so it's got brilliant songs. Just some of the quieter ones didn't go over as well with some people. So, but then it led to him saying, well, if you don't like that, I've got something coming up you will like. And it took like God knows how many months to make and how much money and 3 studios to make it in, but Good Vibrations became a huge hit.
Tim over on Rumble says 700,000 then is equal to about 6 million today.
Yeah.
And that's tiny for this library.
Tiny. It should have been 60 million. Could have been 100 million.
6 billion.
These songs still sell, you know?
Yeah, they do.
But Good Vibrations was his kind of like mini masterpiece of a single. Had all those little bits put together, intricate vocals, the theremin even. Don't get many theremins on stuff. Great vocals. So that was his, like, after Pet Sounds, he said, I'm going to do something that everyone's going to be blown away about. And it was an attempt to become more hip because it was now into the era of flower power and psychedelia and the hippie stuff, and the Beach Boys were seen as passe. This was their, no, we can still progress. We can still do stuff. And then the Smile album, which kind of got aborted later, the whole history in its own. At least it had tracks like Heroes and Villains, which again, very intricate, very beautiful harmonies, and lots of little vignettes put together. Wild Honey, which is a great song, good album, but also I love the track Wild Honey, very good track. Do It Again is just one of my favorites. #1 hit single in Britain, not a big hit in America. So they focused a lot on the British market at that point. It's one of Brian's last great Beach Boys songs, really, I think, for when he was still fully engaged, you know. And then the rest would be history, which we wouldn't have too much time for, I guess. But Smile, not the album he was trying to record. This was the sort of, okay, it didn't work, let's clean it up a bit and put out what we've got, because Brian was falling apart by then. But it's interesting that when Pet Sounds came out and wasn't a big hit in America, 2 months later, the Capitol put out a collection of hits. It might have been called Endless. It might have been the Endless Summer collection. I can't remember. And it was massive. So Brian was also, well, that's great, but it's kind of undercut Pet Sounds because you're playing the old stuff again. You want the old stuff. So,
right.
And that's what Do It Again was about. They recorded after. It was kind of a, let's do a throwback to that sound as a one final, you know, go at it.
And that happened all the time in that period too, of, you know, if an album came out like Pet Sounds and it didn't immediately take off commercially, the label would just torpedo it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, let's
got other things to do.
Get a bunch of hits together and throw them out as a compilation, you know. And
or release a whole ton of singles that they had before. Or something
Capitol were the worst for that. They did it to the Beatles. They chopped all those Beatles albums up.
I was going to say, when I saw that Capitol emblem, I said, there's the Disney of the record business right there.
Dreadful. Dreadful.
And they've had, what sucks is some of the best acts in the business have been on Capitol.
Yes, they have.
I mean, Judas Priest was on Capitol for a long, long time.
Yeah. Brian later on, as Anonymous just pointed out, eventually got back to, I mean, they sat him on stage for years with the Beach Boys behind the piano, and he'd just be sitting there. Hi. But he He eventually conquered a lot of his mental demons. We won't even go over the whole entrapment by Eugene Landry or whatever the guy's name was, and got back to performing, sometimes with Beach Boys guys, sometimes with the Wondermints and other bands. He got over that fear, and we've got a couple of clips of him performing we could show, but he later in his life finally conquered his stage fright.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, a lot of the time he just sat there. You can see him sitting playing the same chords on the piano. He's singing. He wasn't dynamic at that point. He was like,
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and that's all I'm going to do. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
But, and still recorded material. I mean, he was still writing songs and recording, and that's a whole other thing. But, so thank you. Yeah. He's on the Vegetable song on the Smile album. Paul McCartney is on it, biting celery. That's his contribution to that song. He was in the studio. So a lot of people in the chat have mentioned quite a few songs. Hopefully we're going to play some of those over in Rumble for you. So we're going to wrap it up here on YouTube. Before we do that, though, I would like to thank everybody who's been here on the YouTube side. Go join Tim and Low Spec over on Rumble. I will get the link again and post it again. Please join us over there, and we're going to play some tunes for an hour.
Yeah.
And then, because we could talk about the Beach Boys all day. We got to see them. We got to see this stuff. So thank you for being here on the YouTube side. I'm going to knock that one on the head and continue in Rumble. The link is in the chat. Head over there, everybody. Say hello. Click the thumbs up button there, but say hello in the chat so we know you're there. Maybe we'll even play a couple of songs for you.
Those of you that can't make it, don't forget, I start at 6:30.
And I'm assuming the Rumble stream is working okay. Oh, it is, right? Yeah. Just I triple checked. So don't forget, and I think I've got a redirect set up for Joe. Joe's on later on. Are you playing Mass Effect 2 today, or?
Yes, sir.
Yes, that's what I thought.
The only time I deviate from the playthrough is the last week of the month. My man, Lunatic, and I played DC Universe together.
Yeah, you still haven't tapped Miranda, have you?
No, but hey, I'm working on it. But she's being kind of a pain now. I'm thinking about taking on piercing chick now.
Is it a pain in the ass? But
yeah, she's becoming a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And, I don't respond well to that, dude. I'm Renegade. I'm doing a Renegade run,
So check out Joe later on. I'll be, if you're not joining us, Rumble, I'll be on Comics Division as usual later. Pope, anything on the YouTube side you want to plug before we head to Rumble?
Well, not currently. I'm still deciding which games I want to start streaming over on here because, I have a bunch to choose from that are fairly interesting or that I think people would enjoy watching. But other than that, stay tuned in this space for maybe a new channel coming up that involves me and a couple of the other guys from around that you might recognize from places around YouTube.
I am intrigued.
And, I think you guys are gonna like it if you're into music. So,
just before we go, Bare Naked Ladies had the greatest Brian Wilson tribute song.
Yes,
I'm lying in bed just like Brian Wilson said or did. Yeah, love that song. Love the Bare Naked Ladies. Don't we all love the Bare Naked Ladies? Let's get ready to rumble. Ending it on YouTube. 5, 4, 3, 2.5, 1. It is